So I just thought I would start with this essay because when I first came across it, it just made total sense. So I'm just going to read it quickly. It's titled Welcome to Holland by Emily Pearl Kingsley. I'm often asked to describe the experience of raising a child with a disability, to try to help people who have not shared that unique experience, to understand it, to imagine how it would feel. It's like this. When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation trip to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks and make your wonderful plans, the Colosseum, the Michelangelo David, the gondolas in Venice. You may learn some handy phrases in Italian. It's all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The stewardess comes in and says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland, you say? What do you mean, Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life, I've dreamed of going to Italy. But there's been a change in the flight plan. They've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The important thing is that they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of pestilence, famine, and disease. It's just a different place. So you must go out and buy new guidebooks, and you must learn a whole new language, and you will meet a whole new group of people you would never have met. It's just a different place. It's slower paced than Italy, less flashy than Italy. But after you've been there for a while and you catch your breath, you look around and you begin to notice that Holland has windmills, and Holland has tulips. Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy, and they're all bragging about what a wonderful time they have had there. And for the rest of your life, you will say, yes, that's where I was supposed to go. That's what I had planned. And the pain of that will never, ever, ever, ever go away, because the loss of that dream is a very, very significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the very special, the very lovely things about Holland. So if you understand that essay and it makes total sense to you, you're in the right place. So welcome and thank you for coming. You can go to the next slide, Heather. So this is my Pompe journey. Again, my name is Jenny Justo. That's my Gmail and my Facebook group, Pompe Strong. So just a little bit about me. I've been teaching kindergarten for 15 years. I'm married with 2 children, Sophia and Angelina. Sophia is 5 years old and Angelina is 15 months old, and we live in Long Island, New York. Just a fun fact about Angelina, she was actually an IVF baby. We did do genetic testing on the embryos, and her embryo did not have Pompe. And it was actually the ratio that the doctors always tell you if you are going to try and have more children after you've already had one with Pompe, the ratio is 1 out of 4. And the embryos that were tested, the ratios matched exactly, and it's crazy. So 1 embryo had Pompe, 1 embryo was unaffected, and the rest were carriers. So we are very lucky and blessed that Angelina's embryo was successful. So there we are. You can go to the next slide. So Sophia was born in 2015 and was diagnosed with late onset Pompe disease on the New York newborn screening. Pompe disease had only been added to the screening a year prior to her being born. Also, at that time, Pompe was only found on 2 state screening panels, New York, where we lived, and Missouri. And at that time, we were told that she was 1 out of 3 babies or 4 babies in the country that had Pompe. But she was the only baby with late onset. All the other babies they knew of had infantile. So you can imagine how that made us feel. We felt like the only people in the world who had this rare disease. So it was really scary to hear that coming from the doctor. Now, currently, there are 20 states that have Pompe on the newborn screening today. So, within a matter of a couple of years, there's been such a huge change, and now more babies are being diagnosed, and that is major. Early detection is definitely key and maintaining muscle strength. So, we are very blessed that Pompe was on the newborn screening at the perfect time when Sophia was born. You can go to the next slide. You can press the arrow, the right arrow on the keyboard.
Sorry, I am doing that and it is not working. There we go.
So the infamous call. My pregnancy, oh, go back. Nope, go back. You're going the wrong, there you go. So my pregnancy was fine. There was nothing wrong throughout my whole pregnancy. The delivery was fine. We came home from the hospital, everything was fine. And then the next night we got a call from the pediatrician. And I remember seeing his number pop up, on the TV, and I thought quickly in my head, oh, he's calling to check in on us. How sweet, And there was a little voice, I remember looking back, there was a little voice that said, well, maybe something's wrong. But quickly, I shooed that away because nothing could be wrong. And it turns out that was the call that told us that Pompe was positive on the newborn screening. And at that time, I had never even heard of Pompe before. And I started asking the doctor questions, and he was trying to reassure me and tell me, don't panic, it could be a false positive. You need to see a geneticist for a more definite answer. And I kept asking him, is it an Italian disease? Because we're of Italian descent, and because my brain immediately went to Pompeii, the city in Italy. And he had no idea. He couldn't answer any of my questions. And of course, as soon as I got off the phone, what did I do? I Googled it, which, you should never do. It just was horrible. All the things that I was reading and really, sent us into a tailspin. After that, we did see a geneticist, like he said, and she did confirm that Sophia did have Pompe. And it turns out that I actually have an infant mutation, and my husband has a late onset mutation, and she got both, but is considered to have late onset. So when we first went to our first geneticist, she told us, let's just wait and see. Let's wait for symptoms. Symptoms can come around when she's 60 or 70 years old. And by then, everybody has something wrong at that point. So, don't worry about it until you have to. And that really didn't sit well with us. I'm not a wait and see kind of a person. I'm a planner, I'm a doer. So I didn't like that answer. So we ended up going for a second opinion. And at the beginning of that consultation, the doctor said, we're not going to start treatment, we're just here to talk. And literally by the end of that consultation, he was telling us, you know what, we are going to start treatment right away. And our heads were spinning. We were so confused. We didn't know who to believe. We couldn't get a straight answer from, anyone. So it was a really scary time. We didn't know what to do. And it was the first time that, I was scared for my child's, well-being. I was really nervous. You can go to the next slide. So after the call, I call this the aftershock. These are all the stages of emotions that I went through personally. Of course, initially, my first thought when I got the call was, this can't be happening. I was in shock and denial, just a total state of disbelief and just feeling very numb and just not knowing, what to do. And that kind of went into the why me angry stage. I was angry at God, filled with a lot of resentment, why me, why my child, why us, this shouldn't be happening to me. And that went into the feeling of, well, this is our fault. What if we knew about this beforehand? We could have somehow maybe prevented it. So I felt, really guilty for a time. And then that spiraled into, how can I even fix this? There was really no easy fix. So I kind of felt very helpless and hopeless. And with all this uncertainty that we were getting from all the doctors and all these unanswered questions, we really felt like there was nothing we could do. We didn't know which way to turn. And that kind of spiraled into just feeling lost. And I was depressed all the time, crying a lot. It was just really hard to enjoy being a mom. I was the first time mom, and this wasn't how it was supposed to be. And we were so unsure of what to do next. And I really felt like I was robbed, in a way of just having that typical, first time mom feeling and everything. And I'll be honest, Pompe affects everything, everyone in your life, everything. And I had a lot of conflicts with my husband because he just totally shut down, didn't want to accept the diagnosis. His family, they're old school Italian, straight from Italy. So to them, nothing was wrong, and they didn't acknowledge it. And he was, the same. And it was really hard. So there was a big divide between us. And thankfully, my family was very supportive and, helpful, and my friends. So I did have someone to talk to, but the one person that, should be there was, my spouse, and he was just unavailable. So it was really a really hard time, for us. And it took him a good 3 years, and Sophia's only 5. So it's still fresh, but it took him a good 3 years to accept it and be involved with medical decisions. All that stuff was put on my shoulders, and that's a lot of stuff to carry. Just accepting it in the beginning is tough, but actually dealing with now, okay, the insurance and all the doctors and the visits and everything, it's a lot for one person to handle. But thankfully now his family's on board, everybody's on board, we're all Pompe strong, and we're moving forward. So that led me into the, I can do this. One of us had to do something. He wasn't, going to accept it and do anything. Well, I had no choice. So I accepted the diagnosis, we moved forward, and I just tried to find hope and happiness in the little things, like actually, tried to enjoy having the baby, because I felt like that was stolen from me, when she was born. And there was one thing that happened that kind of just clicked in my brain and turned everything around for me. Was I noticed, like I said, I was waking up and just depressed and crying, and I would cry over her when I changed her diapers, and it was tough. And I realized one morning, Sophia wakes up smiling every morning. She's always happy. I should be happy too. So I don't know, for whatever reason, that just clicked in my brain. So I told myself, if she wakes up happy, I'm waking up happy. That's it. I'm not waiting. I was always worried, oh, is today going to be the day that I'm going to see symptoms? The doctors would always tell me, oh, check to see if she has, if she looks like a floppy baby, meaning like she has low tone. And I didn't know what that meant. She was my first kid. I never really held other children. No one in my family or my friends had children. So I had no idea what I was doing. So, just realizing that if she's happy, I'm happy. I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. I'm going to be present and in the moment. It just kind of got me out of my funk. And it really pushed me forward. You can go to the next slide, Heather. So something that I do advise that you can Google is positive quotes. So that was my first step in the right direction, was, what, let me go online and try to find some inspiration somewhere. So I found this quote, always remember, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, smarter than you think, and loved more than you know. I never really considered myself to be brave. I actually am that kind of person who hates needles, hates doctors, hospitals. I faint when I get my blood drawn. So for me, having a medically fragile child, I didn't think I could handle it. I just was, I didn't think I could do it. But here I am, and I'm talking to you. So this is, big for me in a lot of ways. You can go to the next slide. So I don't know if you are aware, but there are lots of Facebook groups dedicated to Pompe. And actually, when I was in my my funk, my depression, I really didn't know which way to turn. I kind of dug myself a hole and just planned on staying there. And my sister was the one who actually found these groups and said, you know, my sister contacted one of the Pompe moms who lived in Missouri, which at the time was the other state where the other Pompe babies were. And my sister made me talk with her over the phone. And I fought it. I didn't want to talk to her. I was scared what I was going to hear. But she made me do it. And it turns out that the Pompe mom had great advice. And I remember thinking, oh my God, she's so strong. For one, she's not crying on the phone right now. I was in hysterics crying on the phone to this stranger that I had just met. And she was so strong. She wasn't crying. She was spewing out all this amazing knowledge about Pompe and the medical field. And I just thought to myself, how did you become who you are? You know, she was amazing. And I remember thinking, I'm never going to be like that. There's no way. How did she get like this? And here I am again. So, you know, you can do it. And so basically, after finding these groups and finding that the Pompe community was just so amazing, so supportive, inviting, they literally saved me, because I knew no one else who had Pompe. No one I knew, or friends, family, no one knew of the disease at all. So this was my new family. And at any time, day or night, you could put a question into any of these groups and someone in the world will answer you. And that was just so, such a great feeling to have someone always there, you know. And it really got me through. And those people suggested that we go to Duke to see Dr. Kishnani. And so if these groups didn't exist, I don't know where Sophia would be today. I don't know where my family would be today. I don't know where I would be today. So I really am very grateful for everyone in these groups. You can go to the next slide. So we went down to Duke, and Dr. Kishnani, we call her our Pompe angel. If you don't know who she is, she's the chief of medical genetics at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. So in November of 2015, that's when Sophia was born and was diagnosed. And a few months later, we did go to Duke, and we finally got the answers that we needed. She was such a wealth of information on Pompe and was so confident in what she was telling us that we knew that whatever she said, we were going to do, and we trusted her immediately. And in August of 2016, that's when Sophia got her first port placed in her chest. And we decided to do that versus using her arm, because the treatments were every 2 weeks, and she was 9 months old at the time, so it was just easier to access the port. And, you know, that was a huge decision to make, because again, you know, we're looking at this child and she looks perfect and beautiful, and we're going to put a port, you know, on her chest, and it was just a lot to handle and very overwhelming. But the surgery went great. And we only replaced the port once. So she's on her second port now, and both surgeries were great, and she doesn't really think anything of it. It's just a part of her, and you know, it is what it is. In September of 2016, that's when ERT, the enzyme replacement treatment, started, and that was really hard, even to just say, okay, we're going to start treatment, but we have no regrets. And Sophia gets bi-weekly treatment. So every Sunday, the nurse comes to our house. First, we started in the hospital. And then after being closely monitored after a year, we were able to transition to home infusions. But in the beginning, starting treatment was difficult because Sophia was the first baby with late onset to start treatment in New York. So in a way, we kind of felt like guinea pigs a little bit. So we were conflicted in the beginning, you know, do we wait? Do we start now? Her numbers weren't crazy elevated. They were about, the CPK level was about 600. Her hex 4 was okay. The liver levels were all right. It wasn't anything alarming. So that, you know, so we did go back and forth. Should we wait? Should we not? You know, and it came down to, you know, the longer you wait, the more muscle could be lost, and then you can't get that back. So that's why we decided to start and just preserve what she already had, her strength. We did go to Mount Sinai in New York City for treatment. There was an infusion center there. And that was another struggle going there, because it wasn't just, you know, Pompe patients. We were the only Pompe patient there. But I also, you know, saw other children who were sick. They had no hair, and that was a lot for me to handle too. So not only did I feel bad for my own child getting treatment, now I felt bad for all these other children, you know, getting treatment. So it was really hard being at the infusion center, and they had like a little community area where all the kids would play, you know, and get their treatment. And I just had to stay in our little suite, you know, for a few months. I couldn't even go out there because it was just too much to handle. And again, I'm crying, you know, when I'm there too. And I remember the social worker coming in, and I was telling her, you know, I feel like all I do is cry over Sophia. She's going to think, you know, like I'm so sad. What if she becomes really sad because she sees me crying? And she said, you know, well, your baby has to see all of your emotions, happy, sad, everything. And just the way she said that, it kind of made me feel a little bit better and not as guilty for, you know, feeling sad, because it was fine that I was feeling sad. It's a normal feeling. But she just kind of made me feel better, saying that, you know what, your kids have to see how you're feeling no matter what the situation. So that helped me in a way. You can go to the next slide. So every August, we do see Dr. Kishnani for the Pompe conference and also for clinic appointments. And I decided to start fundraising. So I created the Pompe Strong team and the Pompe Strong Facebook. And so far, we've raised over $41,000 for Dr. Kishnani's Pompe research. So every time we go down, we do that special big check and everything. And it's really nice. And these are just a few pictures of some of the fundraisers we did. I usually do a walk every year. We also did like a paint night. So anything to raise awareness and raise money. And I'm really proud of our whole team. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So, you know, in the end, Sophia is just a typical kid, right? She does dance, she does ballet and tap. She loves to swim in the pool. She takes piano lessons. She's a typical girly girl. She loves her jewelry and makeup and dressing up. She loves playing with her baby sister and painting and doing crafts. And at the top there, you see our home nurse with Sophia. And I wanted to put that picture in just to show it's just one piece of who Sophia is. You know, Pompe, you know, isn't the be all end all. You know, there's so much more to her and so much more that she can do and give. And she's just a typical kid. And I was going to show you her most recent, her dance recital just happened this past week, and I was going to show you a quick clip. But now that I can't share, I can't show you. But she did a great job, and we're so proud of her. And she's really, you know, so strong and working so hard. And we're just really proud of her. She's come such a long way. We always call her the little engine that could. She was always just a little behind, you know, a little behind. But, you know, she got there in time. And after all, everybody's different anyway, right? So, you know, we're all unique. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses. So, you know, in the end, everyone's good at something. So we're really proud of her. You can go to the next slide. So these are just some of the things I've learned on my journey, to take one day at a time. If you waste time worrying about what will come, you might miss out on what's important now. Enjoy the little things, the little smiles, the hugs and the kisses. sometimes they're easy to be overlooked when you're just so stressed and tired and overwhelmed. You are your child's biggest advocate. No one is going to care as much about your child as you are. A lot of times I found that doctors wouldn't follow up like they say they would. I'm always following up. I always have to call back. I always have to triple check. Did you get that fax? Are you sure you got it? Did you get the results? You know, it's like a second job, pretty much, dealing with the doctors and the whole, you know, all the medical stuff. But don't take no for an answer. You know, listen to your gut, follow your heart, and do what's right for you and your family. Whatever decision you make is the right decision. And you are stronger than you know. You can do it. And if you can't do it now, you will do it in time. And you'll have good days and bad days, but that's okay. You've got this. So those are just some of the things I've learned. And I have to keep telling myself many of these things still to this day. You can go to the next slide. So welcome to Holland. There's no place like home. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome.
And sorry about the technical problems. When we go back into the main room, if you want to share your video, we could okay. Do that. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Sarah. So you're up. Hopefully, well, you were able to share your screen.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a shot again. Fingers crossed.
And we'll get to the questions once Sarah is done. I see there are a few questions, so we'll get to those once Sarah's done with her presentation.
Can everybody see everybody okay? Is it up there?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, thank you. Hello, my name is Sarah Musgrove, and I am a mom to Bruce. He's here with me tonight. He did not want to miss out seeing himself on screen. He's also playing with toys. If you see me doing this over here, it's to get him to stop fidgeting. So I am mom to 2 with infantile onset Pompe. Our story is a fluke. It is not how it happens anymore. There are things and processes in place to hopefully prevent it happening again as more states come off newborn screenings. We also raise cattle. We live in northern Missouri. Bruce would rather be spending his time out on the ranch in a tractor somewhere than anywhere else. And after becoming a Pompe mom 10 years ago, I changed my entire career. I went back to school and now I'm a nurse, a registered nurse, and I'm working on my master's. My disclaimer for this is that you don't have to be a nurse to be a Pompe mom or a caregiver of any sort. You're gonna learn tricks and tips that you never thought you would do your entire life, and you will be showing the nurses how to do things. I love it. I love all of it. Like I have shown nurses in the PICU how to use a G-tube on this kid. And they're like, oh, that's smart. Like that makes sense. And just a little feather in your cap as you go along. But you don't have to be a nurse to do this. You can do it. Okay, so here's Bruce. He's 10. He just turned 10 in May. And that's our sassy little sister, Myra Kay. She is all girl, all something. So she'll be 3 in July. The way that I love to explain genetics, and if we get back to the mainstream, Ryan Colburn will tell me I'm wrong. But in a way, our genetics are a cookbook. And this is not taking into account codons, all those little nitpicky things. So I have a typo. I have a mutation in my chapter 5 gene. One tiny, instead of hat, the word is cat. Something as trivial as that. Dad, however, is missing his entire chapter 18. There's no chapter 18. His deletion was first noticed back in 1992, and it is classified as a very severe gene. Mine, however, my mutation is the first of its kind. They don't know how to classify it because it's never been seen before. It is actually classified as potentially less severe. But we put those two together, we get Bruce and Myra, and they are the only 2 of their kind. I mean, unless we have more kids, which obviously our genetics lotto is not very good. And we didn't do the IVF route. We talked very much about it, but we went the natural surprise route, as it happens with second children usually. And we were just so lucky to have 1 in 4 hit us twice. But that combination creates that recipe for low GAA activity, which GAA being that natural enzyme that breaks down the glycogen. So these 2 have significantly low GAA, which, to answer the question that's in the chat real quick, is one of the things that you take into account when you're looking into starting treatment, is how much natural enzyme are they making, and how is that glycogen in the body affecting the body? So our first diagnostic story. So I was a new mom, first time mom myself. I was 26. My doctor at the time, he was old school Croatian, very much told it like it was. People didn't like him for that. No, not Dad. People didn't like him for that, but he told it as it was, and I loved it. And every time we left, he would say, no drinking, no smoking, no doping. Those were his parting words. No matter how often you told him, I don't do any of those things. He's like, that's what I do. But I kept telling him, I said, listen, I said, he is not an active baby. Like, I should be hitting my kick counts. I'm not meeting the kick counts. Like, something just doesn't feel right. So eventually we got him talking and doing stress tests, me and the nursing staff at the time. And Bruce was failing stress tests left and right. Something was off. Didn't know what, but something was off. So he was born right at 38 weeks by C-section, and he looks normal. If you haven't heard that yet on your Pompe journey, you're going to hear it 100 times. Oh, how can anything be wrong? Your kid looks normal. Well, it's further than that. So he was born on a Friday, May 20th, 2011. And that was the same weekend as the Joplin tornadoes. I don't know if you guys remember back to that weekend, but the tornadoes were rip-roaring through the Midwest, and it was awful. He looked healthy. I thought when I saw him when he was born, that was me. I was like, okay, cool. He's fine. I was just a first-time mom. Everything's fine. Nothing's wrong. That night before I was supposed to go home, I had a bad spinal headache and with my epidural. So we stayed an extra night. But that first night, his legs began to swell. And I'm like, oh, look at these cute little squishy legs, and washing him up in the baby room. The nurse is like, yeah, that's not normal at all. So they ended up doing a chest x-ray overnight that showed that he had an extremely thickened heart. He was born out in a country hospital, and they're like, we think that's a computer screen, but we're not quite for sure. We're going to go ahead and transfer him down to NICU in Kansas City to do further testing. So we get to the NICU, we take the very last bed space at Children's Mercy in Kansas City. We are surrounded by all the babies that came out of Joplin when that tornado hit. And it was utter chaos. And I'm sitting there holding them, and like, of course my family like swoops in, and we're all just like, oh, he's so cute, congratulations. And then all of a sudden I see a nurse, beeping goes off, and I see a nurse banging on the computer screen. I'm like, man, what is going on? But he had his first SVT that night. So his heart not only was extremely large, but he had an electrical current issue where he was having SVTs. So that finally got the doctor's attention, because he did look normal. Like, everything looked fine, but that got the doctor's attention. So originally he was a cardiac case. At the time, and how our fluke story happened, we had a geneticist who used to study in cattle. So we loved her because we raised cattle. So she took a liking to Bruce. She came around, she did the floppy baby test where the baby's laying in that kangaroo warmer. You literally pick the babies up by the arm and you drop them. And if they flop, they have failed the floppy baby test. So it used to be a real thing. I don't think they're doing that anymore. But by Bruce having a thickened heart, by having SVTs with Wolff Parkinson White, and by having failing the floppy baby test, in her mind, that triggered Pompe right away. So all those flukes just happened to be our diagnostic story. So he was diagnosed by those three things in 2011. I'll never forget, we were sitting in the NICU, and those cards that they do the blood stick test for newborn screenings, they kept around and poking and poking and poking. And finally I'm like, when is this going to stop? And the genetics counselor at the time, she goes, you know what? She goes, we think we've got a confirmed blood of a Pompe male, and this is going to help future babies with newborn screenings. Missouri has been trying to get off the ground to be the first state doing newborn screenings, and this is going to help. And I remember at the time thinking, okay, cool, whatever. Fast forward later, it's actually a few months ago, Tracy, her name is Tracy, she works at the state lab, and she's like, yeah, actually we use that blood. So Ryan can tell you more about that, but that's how newborn screenings got started in Missouri. So sorry, that's our backstory. I don't want to talk too much about the backstory because it's mostly, we all have a diagnosis story. Like, we're all here, and now it's kind of like, what now? So enzyme replacement therapy is different for everybody and for when it starts. With IOPD, it was without a doubt. If you have IOPD confirmed, you start right away. When you've got late onset, it's a little different as far as how much GEA the patient's making, how much it's affecting the liver, what they're showing clinically, symptomically. So ERT is just a treatment. It's a very long, extensive, good word. It's a long day for treatment. but it's not the cure. Thankfully, there are still people out there looking for that cure, and we're grateful for them. Their brains are way smarter than mine are. So early and consistent ERT are critical in an individual. As it happens, babies get sick, and if you miss an ERT dose, it's okay. I used to panic in the beginning. I was the mom showing up, banging on, nope, I'm here, we're here for our infusion. And it happens. If they get sick, they got a fever, if they're not feeling well that day, like you don't want to give them that medication to where they're going to create antibodies, and that's our one shot. And if we've got our one shot for treatment and then we just made them resistant to it, then we just gotta, I learned to kind of chill back a little bit. So for reference, Bruce started ERT at 13 days and Myra started at 5 days. And this, I have one mom RN tip in here. In the beginning, I think we all do. We just, with our newborns, we're just sitting there like, what in the world's going on? But the needles and the poking and the prodding, you watch everything. It's just a natural response that we do. Never be, as a nurse now, I'm telling you, never be afraid to ask the questions, to say, I don't think that's right. I think it should be amber tubing. I think that bag should be covered. There are so many tips and tricks. That one nurse in that room that day, that one doctor doing their rounding, they don't know everything. They definitely don't know everything about Pompe. So as you get along into your journey, you're going to start finding out the tips and tricks that are specific to Pompe, and never be afraid to be like, man, that's not right. Like, don't be afraid to speak up. And then, are you going? And then little sister. So when Bruce got over his SVTs, we had a cardiac ablation. When we were pretty good on the enzyme replacement therapy, he was doing great. I said, you know what? I'm doing these things at home. I want to go to nursing school and be a nurse, to be a real big girl nurse. And I can do this too. Rule number one of nursing school is don't get pregnant. And I'll never forget in my orientation thinking, man, that's not going to be me, but how fun that would be to be pregnant. And then lo and behold, here's Myra. So Myra was diagnosed in utero by amniocentesis at 20 weeks. Now they took the DNA, they found out that she had Pompe. We did the amnio on Tuesday and we got the call on Friday night. And I, like Jenny, you see the phone ringing and in your head, you're just like, man, I knew immediately. Like when they called me on a Friday night, I'm like, gosh, here we go. And sure enough, that very same night, we actually had another new mom out of Kansas City who was diagnosed with late onset, who was put in touch with us. And she was the very first one. I'm like, oh, so yeah. Like it was just, it all happened. Everything happens. You know, it gets hard hearing that too. Everything does happen for a reason though. But newborn screenings in Missouri started in 2013 in January. So anyway, so we know with Bruce that cardiac isn't an issue in the beginning. She had 2 fetal ultrasounds to help detect heart involvement. You really can't do anything when you're pregnant and you know they've got Pompe. There have been some studies as far as giving mom ERT to see if that would help. But we knew with Bruce and his genetics that if we got ERT into him immediately, she was going to have a chance. By then he was 6 and doing pretty good.
And I first hold her then.
Yeah, and you got to hold her that night, didn't you?
Yeah.
So a sidebar too. With infusions comes insurance. With insurance comes pharmacies. With pharmacies comes nursing. With nursing comes supplies. It is a constant barrage. The day that I had Myra, I was actually arguing with a pharmacy company sitting bedside in the NICU, trying to get the right stuff for Bruce's infusion. And she's like, is now a good time to talk? And I said, no. I'm in the NICU with my second IOPD baby right now. And I tell you what, if you keep this up, I'm not bringing her to your company. And that was the point that my sister literally took the phone out of my hands. The stories that you will have, like just embrace them. I know it sucks. Like it took me 10 years. It takes me every day to get where you're at, but just life is short. And these babes, I mean, they really are warriors. So she was born by C-section at 38 weeks, started ERT. Now we've got two. So the first decade, it was busy. It's always busy. So we transitioned from infusion. We lived 2 hours from Kansas City. So we were driving every 2 weeks at that time to Kansas City to do infusions. Then the process changed for some kids, IOPD kids mainly, and more severely affected, to go to weekly. So we were driving weekly to Kansas City. And we knew that we were so comfortable by that point with infusions, we knew that we could transition to home. Home nursing can be very hard. If you live in a great city, a big city, you're awesome. If you live in more of a rural area, you got to be a little more advocate. So it took us a while. We actually went through 3 companies who wanted to sit start to finish on infusion therapy, who wanted to drive out to the country, and who were comfortable with kids. 2 kids with ports. Ports are amazing. I'm so grateful for them, but I don't think there's any really other way to go when you have infusions. I don't have one I can't say from experience, but as a mom. But the bad thing is every time they spike a fever, the first thing in your mind is this a blood infection? And you've got to do cultures. Like you'll get into a routine if you go that route where you'll be comfortable with your doctors, but every time they get a fever, you really need to check and make sure it's not the port causing that infection. Because that port goes directly into the heart, then that's going to be an issue. Still recommend ports 100% time, but it is exhausting sometimes. Teething makes you on edge. Find your medical team. So we use a local team out of Kansas City. It's not the same doctor who originally diagnosed Bruce, but we also go to Dr. Kishnani. So we go out to Dr. Kishnani, we take back her recommendations, what she's doing, what she wants to see, and then we bring them back to our team in Kansas City. And that's who does the prescribing, who does the major workup for the blood and things. And we love them. We disagree, we have conversations. It's not always rosy, but just find a team that you love. In my nursing career, I'm a huge advocate for palliative care. Palliative care does not mean hospice. It is not to be, at first as a parent, when I heard it, I thought, oh, that's awful. I want to go on this like PAC team to call it the hospital. I can't do that. Palliative care is wonderful because it helps make all the doctors who are going all over the place to sit down and to have those conversations and better explain things to parents and to family. So if you have a chance to use palliative care at your hospital, I would highly recommend that service and just ask for it. I mean, also patient advocacy. I mean, they've been great for us too, but palliative care, I think, is the way to go. And rare is your new normal. Like we are zebras. In the beginning, we were told that Pompe was 1 in like 200,000, but then Missouri began flagging so many newborn screenings, so many late onset, so many a few IOPDs, mostly late onset, because they're the adults that grow up to be with late onset. We're just catching them as babies. That it was like more like 1 in 40,000. So their numbers in the beginning were it was more than they ever imagined. But that first decade, it brought us 2 pretty dang healthy kids. I mean, Bruce and Myra are on the go. Yes, they're delayed. Yes, they have speech issues. Bruce has some hearing issues. Myra might have some hearing issues too. But they're still active, picking his nose. They're still as active as can be. They're all over the place. Our best PT is the ranch. Like they just love to get out and be active. So what we're continually learning, nothing's the same. Nothing stays the same. Even as of today, I'm in a huge insurance battle because the state that I live in really doesn't want special needs parents to work. Like they're more happy if I were to stay home and just not do anything. So as being a working mom, I have to fight insurance. And it's even today, 10 years into this mess, nothing stays the same. It's always changing. I had a conversation today with a lady who works at the state level, and she's like, I have learned more from you today about insurance than I do from the specialists. But I can't do anything about it. I can't get their income. Like I could tell you all kinds of things, but I can't have their income or benefits. Another story. But there is power in advocacy and learning. Like you're going to constantly learn. And the great thing about it too is the research and advocacy world, they're constantly looking for Pompe. They don't stop. Like I just got sent a journal the other day about using snake venom as like a vector. And like the things that they're doing, I know these things are new and they're happening, but they are happening. So just never give up hope. I mean, you'll hear that too. Never give up hope. And find tools that support home life. Pulse oximeters, thermometer, nursing. You're going to be home. Like you spend your life at home, not always in the hospital. So it's hard to find that comfort level. I had a hard time in the beginning. Like what would make me comfortable to be home and just to find those tools and resources from the hospital. Again, you got to talk to the state and learn their lingo, and you will never find people at the state who know what's going on. They're going to hear Pompe and Lumizyme treatment, and they're right over the head every time. Insurance, same thing. Lawyers, we've had a great lawyer. She's helped us do special needs trusts for the kids, just something to help with assets. If you have assets and a special needs kid, depending on your state, it's a nightmare. But find a good elder law attorney, find a good special needs care attorney, and then they'll help you. And finally, these crazy kids. So this is Sassy Myra. This was our last Christmas picture. All toddler, all girl. When we found out we were having a girl, we were in the ultrasound room, and I had thought it was a boy. And even the doctor, my old school doctor,
Me too.
we all thought it was a boy. The lady goes, "It's a girl." And I said, "Oh shit." because I knew she was coming. Like I knew what was going to happen, and she is 100% me in the flesh, like wild. Dad took her out tonight to go grocery shopping just so we could have some peace and sit here on the computer.
Yay.
But you will find a balance. And like at Jenny's stories, I've never heard that one before, and that was wonderful. It is Holland. Like it's a great country. It has its days. It has its days, but your life will evolve. So we have good days, we have great days, and we have days that we even forget about Pompe. Like we are able, even though we're doing weekly infusions, and every Tuesday, Mom is sitting down at the table doing the infusions, we forget. I mean, come Wednesday, it's a new day, and we just keep on going. A great part of the pandemic was to come to find out once you get established, once you get doing your routine care, you don't need as many doctor's appointments as you think you do. And I loved it. Telehealth. The doctor would look, hey, cool, it's great. I checked the blood work. You can send in blood work. It's fine. Like you learn that the hospitals, you don't need as much as they think you do. And of course, educate yourself. So this is our little plug. Ryan Colburn can talk more about this too, but we have a group of us parents. Ryan's been our ringleader. He's a late onset. He was diagnosed 2015. He's an adult with late onset. He's on treatment. Manages to find infusions all over the country. Like he can fly all over and like he's got an infusion lined up for him. It's amazing. But then a group of us moms too have been working together. And it's called the Day One Guide. So our goal is to get this guide out there to help people who have been diagnosed, who hear on Pompe from people who have no idea what Pompe is. Like we got lucky. Our doctor at the time, she said, whatever you do, don't Google Pompe. And we listened. Like we spent 11 very long days not on Google. There was Google back then, imagine. But the information last 10 years really hasn't got that much better. So we've gone together, we've created this guide. You can email pompeinformation@gmail.com. They could send you a PDF to it. We're hoping to eventually get it in the hands of everybody to help prevent some of the scariness out there on the internet. But other than that, and I wrote down notes from Jenny. Yeah, so the kids now do, we do weekly infusions with IOPD. The standard dose is 20 milligram per kilo biweekly, but we're doing a 40 milligram per kilo dose weekly. So we're taking that regular dose and quadrupling it. Everyone's different. Work with your doctor. Get a hold of Dr. Kishnani. She'll help with guidelines and what her recommendations. But that was one that came from her. And then also too, if you've got a newborn baby after newborn screening and you're thinking about starting infusions, ports, I still recommend ports are the way to go. It is common to have to replace those ports when they're babies because of the placement. Bruce had to change his, Mara had to change his too. Bruce has had his second port for 8 years. Like vascular radiology intervention couldn't believe it. We were in the hospital about a year ago and they couldn't believe how long his port had been in there, but they last. But sometimes with babies, it's just a hard time keeping going. But yeah, other than that, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And a huge thanks to Pompe Alliance too. Like we love getting our story out there and we could talk all day about this. 10 years ago, maybe not so much. You learn to find your balance.
2 years ago,
Thanks.
maybe.